Authors Chaos. I'm SF Rogers.
And I am DL Golden.
And we're really, really glad you're here. And joining us today is David. Pronounce your last name for me, David.
It's Vincent. V as in Victor, I-N-C-E-N-T.
Okay.
Vincent.
And David is a fellow author. He's also an avid listener to the podcast. So he's one of the first people.
We're so sorry.
He's one of the first people who reached out and was like, hey, I listened to your podcast. And we were like, oh, no. Oh, no.
I haven't heard a bad episode yet, so.
Oh, good. Thank you for that. We appreciate it.
Well, tell us who you are. You know who we are. Who are you?
Okay, well, yeah, this is the worst part. Like, I listen to a lot of interviews, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know what I'm going to say either. But being put on the spot like that, who am I? Wow, that is a good question, right? No, for this purpose, of course, my name's David. I've been writing for about 3 years. I've been a avid fan of all forms of media. I love comics. I love fantasy. Just anything that I can get my hands on to escape the world that we live in sometimes. But writing itself, it wasn't one of the first things that I've ever wanted to do. I didn't wake up in the morning as a 5-year-old and say, I want to write. But I did say I want to draw. And so I've kind of been an artist my entire life.
Nice.
Consuming those kind of medias then led to, well, can I write? I don't know. I feel like everybody has a story in their head. And over the last few years, this story, A Magic Tale, has been that for me.
Okay.
That's really, really cool. Yeah, I think a lot of us are story obsessed dorks that want to
Yes.
be like, oh yeah, I could tell a specific story.
Yes.
And you said 3 years ago you started writing. So would you say like the pandemic or COVID had anything to do with that catalyst, or was it just spur of the moment you thought, I'm going to write now?
Yeah, toward the end of COVID, the pandemic, it started out as literally a question. What if a witch had a familiar and met a vampire? It's a random thing, but it was the question that started this whole journey.
Right.
I think it's funny. We've talked to a lot of people who were like, yeah, all of a sudden I had all this extra time and I'm alone with my thoughts.
Yep.
And so those thoughts start to escape onto paper, right. I think.
So I've read the first chapter of Magic Tale, got into chapter 2 last night before I got distracted with you on TikTok. But it feels very D&D-esque, or like a role-playing. It's really, really fun. Are you influenced by Dungeons and Dragons and things of that nature?
Well, it's funny that you say that. Honestly, so I play D&D. I have a group that I play with. We've got about 5 campaigns that I'm a player in. And this story kind of maybe a little bit majorly influenced by D&D. It is set in a fantastical world, higher fantasy, low tech, And when I first started writing, especially Irnan, he had the leather armor. He had a little knife that was stuck to his thigh, very D&D first level campaign adventuring kind of stuff. Yeah. It did evolve from that, but that was where the idea really was.
That's awesome.
I think it's cool. People find inspiration in different stuff that they're just avid fans of.
Mm-hmm.
So often we get stories and stuff that we're like, oh, we're gonna write our own version of that or our own thing.
Uh-huh.
And I think D&D lends itself so much to that storytelling because it's such a free kind of roam thing in and of itself.
Feels like Skyrim.
Yeah, right.
I love Skyrim. Yeah.
And I began writing our short story for the Secret Project thing, and it took like heavy inspirations from like Baldur's Gate. So I definitely understand the implication to be like, oh yeah, I could write something based around this stuff. So that's really cool. I think that's a really neat concept.
Right. And the cool thing is the way that characters interact with each other. in that first couple of chapters, because you're seeing like the differences in the witches compared to the humans, and then the familiars compared to the humans too, where it's like, whoo, okay, this barkeeper is kind of a huge prick. Like, he's a prick. I don't like him. I don't like him at all. And I even messaged you that. I was like, I do not like this guy.
That's Sarah's go-to with any story. It seems like, why did you write this person?
Why did you write this person? I hate this.
No, honestly, and that is the feel. Now, it won't be everybody, because that's how life is, right? Not everybody is the same. But in this first thing, I really wanted to set that tone where the world's at. A little backstory that we won't get to for a long time, because that's how books work sometimes, is witches and familiars are part of a marginalized race. Humans are rampant. They're say if the world is 100,000 deep, witches and familiars, they make up maybe 4,000.
Okay.
So like humans are the base, and witches and familiars live in that world.
Okay.
But it wasn't always that way. That's the interesting part. So.
Okay.
So is this a high fantasy type story? Is this what genre would you place this under?
It is. So I'm kind of like up in the air, struggling if it's high fantasy or not, because a lot of people are like, well, high fantasy deals with dwarves and other fantastical creatures or races. Mine pretty much stays within witches, familiars, elves. I call them fae, which blankets everything from fairies all the way to elves.
Yeah.
But so I say fantasy, just the fantasy genre. But it is a fantasy romance. Low spice. It's not, when I say romance, it's not like sorry. when it's romance, it's not like heavy sexualized. It's more focused on the actual love story.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can vibe with that.
I can understand that, yeah. It's so often we meet people who, we've met people who write fantasy stuff that is heavy spice, and then we've met people that write fantasy stuff that is like for middle schoolers.
Yes.
And so it's such a gamut between what we're actually running into with
romance isn't synonymous with spice, someone says. So you're right. You're good. You're in the right genre there.
So you're working on a sequel already for this, or you finished the sequel already. So
yes, yeah.
How many books do you plan on putting out for it?
Say that one more time.
How many books do you plan on making in this series itself?
6 initially, but it could go as 7. I've got 5 already written. I just need to buckle down and refine them.
Right. Man, 6 books?
Daniel's I'm struggling with 2.
I got like 3 in me. I'm like, maybe after that we'll see where we stand.
And Sarah's
6.
over here with 2 whips.
2 whips, a 5-part epic. A history of the United States starting from 1463. It's crazy.
It's all about what the world does. Like, I'm a pantser, and affectionately so. I had the story. I had a beginning, middle, and end that I knew that I wanted to get out. But in between those points, the characters were like, let's do this instead. Oh, wait, let's do this.
Yeah, it's Sarah and I are both pansters. I learned very quickly that with my second book, I have to do a bit more planning. Because I've noticed I'm running into things that I'm like, oh, I said this in the first book. I have to go back and make sure that it makes sense. But a lot of times, as I've told Sarah, my characters get away from me. And it's so easy for a character to take on a life of their own, and they're just like, oh no, this is what I'm gonna do. And is that how you feel like it runs for you too?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, so in my first book, Rania is the main female lead, and she is so headstrong and confident, and she's wonderful. She's probably one of my favorite characters. And so it froze. So I was like, I don't know if it's recording.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, modulated there for a second. Yeah, keep going. You're good.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, and so she kind of took over halfway through, and I was like, this is fine, because Irnan and her together make up that first book's main character series kind of thing, you know? So I'm fine with her, like, really taking over, giving her her voice, because she's wonderful. I absolutely love Rania.
She's fun. She's a fun character.
Yeah.
She really is a fun, like, just listening to her when she's talking, like, she's talking to the lady at the hotel at the inn, and she's like, well, we have permission to be here. Why don't you go tell your boss that you're not giving us permission to be here? I was like, oh, girl, I like you. I like you a lot.
She doesn't sit around. She doesn't sit on her hands, that's for sure.
Nope.
So what inspired this story? If you could pick some piece of media or something that inspired this to occur, what is the inspiration for this, do you think?
Sure. It's funny. At first, if you asked me that question, like, say, a year and a half or 2 years ago, I'd be like, well, nothing. I inspired myself, you know. But
Yeah.
as I'm looking at it, The Witcher, I love the Witcher series. I love the video games. A little bit of, say, Avatar is heavily influenced in there. Not the live action. I love James Cameron, but you know, the actual cartoon version, where it's that piece between spirituality and the physical world really plays a big deal into it. Irnan is a character. He's an empath, and you know, psychologically speaking, or even magically speaking, it's somebody that is really in tune with their own feelings and maybe others. You know, I take it a step further and expand that he can influence emotions. He is easily overwhelmed by emotion. So in that regard, he's very aware of the world around him. You know, so I would say those two things are really, really heavily influenced. And I really like it.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I think we met a lot of people who are like, yeah, I watch anime, I read comic books, I have all these books that I like, and that I've just taken pieces that I've enjoyed from them, tropes that I've enjoyed, and tried to work them into stuff. And I think that's kind of just how creativity in general works.
And I think for most of us, it's been that drive of like, I'm going to create this character and I'm going to get their story out there no matter what. Like, right. I'm going to get that story out there. And like my whip with Bastion and Erlen, the Shadow of the Demon King, yes. Like that's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Like, I love that story. I wanted to tell that trope of like, girl gets taken as a sacrifice, and it has stuck with me for so long that I just finally pulled the trigger and was like, okay, I'm going to start this story and like get it out of me. And I think it's interesting to meet people and then be like, yeah, I saw this guy on the side of the road and thought, hey, that's a start to a story. Or I heard this song and hey, that's a start to a story. So
it's so funny what a trigger can be for that
right?
kind of stuff.
For sure. So when are you expecting to have this book out and released?
I'm going to try to say around April 20 in 2024, because it's almost done. I mean, it literally is. This is the part of the process that I have no idea about. I do want to query. I think that it's a good story. I won't wait too long to get anything back. But this is the intimidating part for me, is like, well, if I don't do the traditional publishing route, if I go through self-publishing, which is awesome, how do I do it?
Right.
You know, so well, I know Amazon's pretty easy, but that's the question that I have.
Well, luckily you also have a bunch of people like in this community who are willing to like, hey, let's talk about this. Let's get this all together.
Yeah. If you publish, there's so many people on TikTok. I mean, Christian Francis, us, anybody, us, like I don't have any authority,
right?
That have done some of this stuff that are more than happy to help. We've talked to a few people who have traditionally published. It's a different animal altogether. Mm-hmm. But once the querying is done, I think a lot of that is run by the people who accept it.
Yep.
And so it's one of those things that it's up to you however you want to go. But
I have found, like, I'm so close to having my first book published, right? Like, I'm so close. I have found that, like, finding the people to help me, like, what I'm calling my street team, the people who are helping me, like, push my book, has helped in the marketing. So that's definitely something to look into, is people who are willing to help push your story. Like, I've been teasing my street team with teasers of the cover, and some of the videos that they've created have literally made our cover artist and his wife just howl with laughter because they're so funny. Like, they're so, definitely think about that coming up on your book, is trying to get a street team together, people who will support your art and they want to help you get your story out there.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that is the number one thing too. I've learned so much over the last year and a half, especially through TikTok and all the community. One, it's so nice. I love book talk. I love author talk. You guys, especially, it's like, it's really, really nice. Like, I could not be confident in my work. I couldn't be where I'm at if it wasn't for, like, seeing the community come together like that.
Well, and you've done it the right way by getting into book talk early, and Sarah has too. Getting into it early before stuff is out. That way you can say, hey, this is what I have, this is what I've been working on, and build up that excitement and that hype. For me, I didn't join book talk or author talk until I dropped Origins
you
on
had
May
almost
1st.
Yeah.
It was literally the week of.
Uh-huh.
And I dropped it after I'd hit that publish button. And so then I was backtracking, trying to get people hyped up about it. I think that building up beforehand is vitally important.
Oh, for sure.
Regardless.
And I used to share teasers all the time when I was writing, of, like, things that I had written to kind of pique people's interest. And one of the things that I realized is, like, I can give you 3 paragraphs and it not spoil anything, but it be enough to be like, hey, I'm going to come back to this book when it comes out because I liked what I heard when she was making those videos. So definitely, if I'm going to give any piece of advice to you as an up-and-coming author, like, tease the crap out of it.
Yeah, promoter.
I've been trying to do a lot of, like, because again, my art, I want to incorporate my art into my story. And here, I'll show you a little bit. I mean, you guys can see, but so, like, I'll draw.
Oh, that's so good.
The characters, and then I'll put it
like that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
No, it looks phenomenal.
Thank you. And so what I'll do is I'll draw the picture, make a video, and I'll type up the scene that I drew from or that took inspiration. And that's gained a couple tractions, here and there. And I think that if I can tease that, that's not only teasing the art, but that's teasing the writing style that I have, my voice maybe. So.
For sure.
Yeah.
And someone just commented and said, you have to tease, don't just put it out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My mistake. I mean, I've sold enough of them, but it's been like a lot of backtracking just because I was, that fear of, oh, is this ever going to get published, holds you back from actually doing it. But putting it out there, I think, holds you accountable as well. Right. Because now Sarah can't just go, well, I'm not releasing this because the street team is going to lose their mind on her. So
I strategically put myself in a place where it was like, I'm gonna read bits and pieces of the story, and I think in the back of my mind I knew I can't be sharing these snippets and then never release anything because people are going to riot. Like,
where's the tease? What am I doing? Where's the payoff?
And then I'm like, well, I'm gonna make a Discord so that people will stay on me to edit. And like, I was on TikTok the other night, and one of the girls saw me and she goes, aren't you supposed to be editing? And I was like, I'm going. Like, leave me alone.
Called you out on it.
Nicole said she made the mistake with her cover of releasing it and not teasing it.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I will say that I've thoroughly enjoyed, is teasing my cover. Yeah. Because people are asking, well, like, why is your street team freaking out? Well, I'm just sharing the worst teaser photos that I can find.
I see a lot of people, and they do it really good. Like, it's like a white canvas, and they'll have rips through their cover, revealing it underneath. That's neat.
Yeah. See, because I started so late, my initial cover release was literally my first post. It was like the first thing I ever posted, and it's like it was like a cap cut of it, and it's like, okay, well that got like maybe 4 views because nobody knew who I was. But I mean, since then, people love a cover.
Oh, and a cover reveal. So when you start talking about doing a cover reveal, like tease it, get it ready, because they will go crazy once they can finally see like what's underneath those teaser photos. And that was probably the advice I got.
Yeah.
And they say about covers and not judging a book by it, but we are visual creatures. Yeah. And
how many times have we gone over this? That you can pretend all you want that the book cover doesn't matter, but if you release a blank cover with just the words on the front in Times New Roman, no one's going to pick it up.
No. Well, it's like I showed Daniel last night on TikTok. I've got 2 classic literature books, Pride and Prejudice and The Picture of Dorian Gray. And they have these beautiful, like, they're not pictures. It's just like this beautiful cover on it. Looks like a leather-bound book. They're my favorite books. But it's because that cover is like, oh, that's so different. But then I have Fourth Wing over there, and I've got other books on my bookshelf that the covers are just divine.
That and sprayed edges. Witches love sprayed edges.
I was going to say sprayed edges. I saw a video with sprayed edges, and I think I really want to do that. I think it's beautiful.
Oh yeah, see, Casey Sutton, he was like hand spraying all of his edges for some of them, and oh my gosh, it looks so good,
gorgeous.
I wish I could do that, but I don't.
I am not talented enough. No, I would ruin the book. So, the second book, you said you just finished it. Is that getting ready to go out to betas? Are you sending that to an editor first?
I'm going to send it up to betas. So I've been doing all my editing on my own. I do want to reach out. I have a couple people in mind that I do want to reach out and get them professionally to look at it. You know how money is, starving artists and all that. So it's like finding that amount that I can put towards it. But yeah, so I'm going to send it out to betas here soon. I made a post about it yesterday, just saying, hey, especially if you've already read the first book, or if you want to read the first book, I can send you the second book too. They're 87,000 words, so I mean it's not an epic, but it's the way that the story works. Originally, when I wrote my story, it was 277,000 words, all one shot. It was a telling of Irnan and Ranya's journey all the way through until a epic end. But I learned that most debut authors can't sell a huge book like that. The Brandon Sandersons can, but not a David Vincent.
Well, so here's the great thing about that, though. You can release them all separate and then do an omnibus for later.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and 200,000+ words. I mean, that's 4 books at least.
That's a thick boy.
Thick boy.
You need a book to drop on your head and knock you unconscious. That's the kind of book.
That's a book that you set down and you make nothing move underneath it.
The thing you tie yourself down to in case of a tornado.
Yes, there you go. There you go.
Yeah, no, I have a buddy of mine. He's like, yeah, my book's about 200,000 words. I'm like, that's going to be a lot of words, my man. But you do what you want to do. I'm at 63 on Odysseus, 63,000 right now, and it's not done. But it's going to be longer than Origins was. But Origins, I think, capped out at 75,000, and I was proud of that. I'm like, that's enough. That's good. That's fine.
And then your sister comes behind you and says, hey, I wrote a 99,000 word book. And he's like, you did what?
Right. Well, see how I can get away from you now. Like I said, I'm at 63,000. I'm halfway through.
Right.
So I definitely see the issue.
I think as a panster, it comes down to like, are your characters ready for the story to end?
And what are you capable of cutting?
Yes.
Right. The thing. I mean, so much. You're like, I love this.
Is that something that you ran into, like, especially in the first book, is having to cut stuff that maybe wasn't necessary?
Yes. So, so how I did it, again, 277, I ran it all the way through. That was my first draft. when I sent it out originally, they were like, "Well, you probably want to break that up." So I was like, "Okay." Well, I couldn't just break it up because if I split it into threes, it didn't tell a cohesive story. It didn't, I had a middle. I mean, I had a beginning, and then I didn't have anything else after that, right? So I was like, okay. So I had to rework book one completely, only in the stance that I had to give book one its own standalone story, and so that's what I did. I focused on. You'll get to it here in the next couple chapters. My inciting incident basically turns into the whole story of book one, with the undertones leaning up to book two, book three, to tell the full story. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That sounds really interesting. I mean, if you've got that much written, what do you feel like is your end date for the series then? I mean, like, if you're talking 2024 for the first book, when do you think all of this will be done that people can read it in one big
Like if they wanted to buy all of it.
Yeah.
Sure. So how I'm doing it, especially if I want to go with self-publishing, which is easy because boom, you can just put it out there, and you don't have to wait for a release time, all that.
Yeah.
It's basically self-imposed release time for yourself if you want. But how I feel, once book one's out there, I'd say in 6 months I can release book two. And then maybe a year I would release book three, just so I can have great time for editing.
Yeah.
Book 4 and 5 are already set. I just have to tweak them. And then I'm currently writing book 5 right now. Like on I use my phone for all my writing stuff. So, but yeah, book 5 is on my phone and I'm writing it.
That's nuts.
See, that's amazing.
It's really great.
It's amazing.
3 years and 5 books produced. That's crazy.
It is literally taken me a year and a half to get to where I'm at with one book.
I'm telling you, man.
One book.
Find the time. That's
I only did it in downtime. So like before the end of my night. So as I was laying in bed, I'm sitting here in the dark room, the phone illuminating my face, and I'm just like, and Iernan and Rania do this.
So do you feel like doing that? Do you feel like you had to force yourself to stay working on it at times, or was it just like, oh, I'm so excited about this, I'm going to keep going?
So, book one, the 277,000, I didn't put down for 3 months. Like I just wrote it all the way through. I took about maybe a month break before I started book, the second book. It's such a hard thing to say that because I technically split book one into 3 parts, right? Mm-hmm. So my second book is technically the 4th book in the series. But yeah, I took about a break. I took about a month break, and then I started it again and went right through it.
That's the beautiful thing about this, writing your own stuff and not having a deadline on it from a traditional publisher at the moment. Because you can sit and you can say, okay, I want this to be the best it can be. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to sit and wait on it for a little while. It can also be your worst enemy.
Yes.
But I mean, I started writing the sequel to Origins right after I dropped Origins the first time. And then I'm like, oh, this isn't cohesive. I don't like how this is going. And I restarted it. So I worked for probably 4 months on a draft of just like the first few chapters. And I was like, oh, I don't like this. And I restarted it. So
I know several people who are like, I wrote 10,000 words and erased them because I hated it. And I was like,
God, my
you just
5th graders
killed 10,000 words?
Their minds. I tell them to write a paragraph, and they're like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah, Aliyah was like, "So I started this story. I'm 10,000 words in, and then like 2 hours later, she's like, I hate it. I'm starting over. I scrapped it." And I'm like, "That's 10,000 words, man."
That would hurt my heart. That would hurt my heart.
Like, kill your darlings.
Yes.
My god.
Yes.
Well, we're talking about the same person who wrote almost the 80% of an entire book and lost access to it, and is just like, okay,
it's time to move on.
I don't know that I can do that. I would be burning Microsoft to the ground.
She is
not literally,
but the stories that she's come up with in that devastation of losing that second book
have been worth it
because they're very well thought out, and they're yes, it's insane, but super proud of her, like super proud of you for getting that many words out in first draft. Like
Yeah.
Because I
It
made
just
it
wouldn't
10
stop.
because I was like, it has to end. Like,
Has to
this
be
is
over.
coming. Like, it's
Mhm.
done.
Right.
I just and like I said too, like I had that beginning, middle, and end. So that end, I just needed to get to it. And I guess 277,000 words later, I got to it. But
Yeah, so do you start working that way on all of your stories then as well? Like mine, my story always starts with an ending in mind. I'm like, I need to know how this is going to tie off so that I have a finish line that I can get to.
yes,
So do you feel like you're sitting on a finish line constantly for stuff before you move into a story?
yes, absolutely. In fact, the overarching story that I have an end. I know exactly where I want to end it and how I want to end it. Each book, I also do the same thing. So I'll have the beginning of the book, the middle of the book, and the end. But everything in between, each book, now that can do whatever they want to do, whatever they want to do. It's
It's
the
so
side
true.
quest time. It's the side
I
quest.
got the first sentence planned and the last sentence planned, and then whatever they do on their way is what they do on their way.
I tell people all the time, I'm like, you do realize that I create these characters and their personalities, I create their weapon, I create the world, and I go play.
Don't
And then
hurt
I
too
just
many
write
things
what
for
they
me,
then I
please.
just write what they do. Like, this is the, I don't know. You're like, I know that the last line, or the ending, what you want the finish line to be,
It's
like the
such
climax.
a natural way to tell a story, though.
Yeah.
I mean, how often were stories told in the past that the person starts out and they just go and they just kind of riff off of what they're writing?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of storytelling in the past was not, oh, I'm going to hit A, B, C in plot structure
Right.
to get to where I'm going. It's this oral tradition stuff.
Mhm.
And so being a pantser is just this natural feeling thing.
Yeah.
And your characters feel natural and feel real because of that.
With so many books, have you had to plot more so that you keep track of what Irnan and Raina are doing?
Yes, absolutely. So in what I ran into in book 2 that I just finished, book 3 has been cannibalized because I've used a lot of their chapters in book 1 and 2 to rearrange and make a good cohesive story. So right now, I'm looking at book 3 on my computer. Give me 1 second, I'll show you, because I'm starting to write it right now. Book 3 is sitting at 80,000 words, but I know that I'm going to delete 60,000 of that because it's already been told.
Elsewhere. Right.
Yeah, so book 3 is going to be right here, what I need to do, like brand new.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, I totally understand that.
Yeah, it came down to me for book 2. I had to get on like lore building websites like World Anvil and start like running timelines so that I wasn't overlapping in places. Because for those not following, which hey, hello. My book doesn't follow a strict linear timeline, it doesn't feel like. And so I don't want to spoil too much because I know Ella's in here. But so I'm having to keep track of where stuff is and what's going on and things like that. So it's been different.
Well,
and figure out the background. My gosh.
For me, like you're talking about, like how you want it to start and how you want it to end. I was on my way to Branson Saturday and just had a scene come up for book 2 in Lilac Cursebreakers. I have no idea how we got there. I have no idea what's happening.
You told me that.
I just know that she is very mad and is just not good, right? Like there's just, I'm like, how did we get to this point? And she's like, you don't need to know that. And I'm like, I do. I can't open the book like this. And Elia's like, yeah, I can. It's fine. I'm like, no.
You can, sure, just do it. Just go along with it. I have so on my phone, I have all these scenes written out sometimes. Like in book 5, I had a scene originally planned out where Ranya takes on another familiar. It's a python familiar, so he is this 16-foot snake, and they're just, it's like a cat and a snake. You ever see a cat and a snake fight like that? Well, I had that all written out. When I actually started writing that scene, it changed completely. So you can have it in your head, but when you get to that scene, it might be a little bit different.
Yeah, it's always such a rough skeleton. I'm like, okay, they've got to walk into this place. Yeah. And then once they walk into the building, what do these characters say that diverts how everything's going to go? Yeah. I feel like it gets away from me so fast.
Yep. For sure.
So
But in a
quickly.
good way, because sometimes you just have to like lasso them and reel them back in and be like, all right, we're good.
Right? Yeah.
You're like, we don't need to talk about the cups here at the bar for 45 minutes. Okay, we can move past that.
The glass was amber.
Yes. And the drink.
We get it. They did a lot of great casting.
Laced with arsenic. I don't know.
Up in the floorboards.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy. But I mean, that's just the beauty of writing stuff, though. I mean, I think that you get a natural feel when you do stuff like that. I think that people that plan every little aspect, characters can end up feeling wooden because they're playing by a script.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel that way when I'm writing stuff because I don't know what the script is before it comes out of the mouth.
I don't know what my characters are going to say one page to the next.
Right.
That's exactly right. Like, sometimes we write plot devices to further said plot. And I try not to do that. I try to be like, well, would it happen naturally?
Right.
Would my character actually do the thing?
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't, if the answer is no, then I scrap it. I have to.
Yeah. Cats.
Chaos. But you saw her.
So we always wrap this up. You know how this goes. If you had one piece of advice to give to burgeoning authors that have been at this for 10, 15 years, whatever, what piece of advice would you have to give?
I hear this advice a lot, and I think that it's actually really good advice. There's a couple things. Write what you know is important. Research is so important, even if you know the item that you're writing. But if you don't have any idea of what you're writing, you might lose your passion for it, say 45,000 words in, and then you might be lost. So I feel like when you write what you know, take it a step further and say, write what you believe in. What grabs your heart. Ian and Rania, all these characters that I've created, they're little aspects of myself, and I love them. I've had to explore myself through them, and it was a journey. It's been a journey, but it's a really good journey. So I feel like that would be the advice. Write what you believe in, to take that write what you know a step further, and fall in love with your characters. Don't let them just be things on a page,
Mm-hmm. That's a really good advice.
I think it's that putting passion into what you write.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. You have to love what you're doing because writing is work.
But let's also
and you're going to be spending a lot of time with them.
You're the one who's going to read the book the most.
Right.
You're the one who's going to be in that world the most. And if you hate what's happening or hate the characters, like, that is going to convey very quickly that, like, oh, like, this was not written.
Right.
This was not written from a loving perspective. Like,
I have there's a little story I have. So a few days ago, I was with my friend and they're reading my book, and I was like, pick a random quote, random scene, anything that you want from my book, and I'll tell you exactly where it's at and what I'm doing with it. And they did, and I answered that challenge. They were pretty impressed. Because you read your story so much, you know it,
Well, and you know the place you were when you put the stuff down on the page. Yeah. I mean, our thought processes always lead into other stuff. I mean, like we were talking about, the random sparks that drive us into story beats.
Right.
The fact of listening to Walden with my fifth graders and thinking, man, this is really boring, and my mind wandering to a point where I'm like, hey, what if this became a book that could
what if this was
magic
spells? What if this was magic?
And it's like, why is that the catalyst? Right. But that's what creativity is, and I think that's important.
But it's just like sitting on my back deck looking at trees and going...
And thinking, come.
Yes.
Oh. So, I mean, I think that says it best. Fall in love with your stuff. Do what you
in love with your in love with your characters and love your story.
Yeah.
That's really good advice, David.
Because if nobody else does, you have to.
You're in it.
You have. Yeah. Because what are we doing as authors if we don't love our stuff?
Right.
Right.
What's the point?
Right.
Is the thing.
Right.
All right. we're gonna wrap this one up for the day. So, I Am D. Ogle is on Origins Redux is on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited, as well as hardback, paperback. You can find it in all those places.
I am SF Rogers. ARC signups for Execration of Autumn are linked in my link tree on my TikTok. Feel free to go fill that out. Join our Discord. It is complete and utter chaos. It is the best. My street team is 100% some of the coolest people that I've ever met. We have cover reveal coming here on the Author's Chaos on the 21st with Alex Perkins joining us. So if you want to hang out and see my cover first before it goes all over TikTok and the interwebs, come join us at 11 a.m. on Sunday the 21st for that. And then ARCs will go out February 9th and official release date is March the 22nd. So,
David, give us your plug.
Sure. I'm still trying to figure my way around the internets, but you can probably find me anything at Cat Claws Writer. That's pretty much my handle on a lot of different platforms. I'm on Instagram. Of course, TikTok is where I'm most at. I post all my art there. I'll do story stuff. I try to sneak into people's lives all the time, so you might see me around there. But yeah. Look out for the book. It's A Magic Tale, Book 1, The Hunter's Journey.
David, it has been fantastic talking to you. Thanks for spending some time with us.
Yes. And we are the Author's Chaos, and we'll see you later.